Hello, welcome to your academy. At your academy, we have been dealing with lectures regarding reader response theory. We have already dealt with Introduction to Reader Response Theory. If you want to watch the lecture on Introduction to Reader Response Theory, you can check out this link that has popped up at the top of the video. And if you want to watch any lecture on any topic regarding literary theory and criticism, you can visit homepage of your academy, go to the playlist section, and under the playlist section, you can go to the playlist concerning literary theory and criticism, and there you will find a number of lectures on different topics concerning literary theory and criticism. Or you can directly visit this link that has popped up at the top of this video to go to the playlist section of literary theory and criticism. In this lecture today, we will take up transactional reader response theory. Now, towards the end of the lecture on Introduction to Reader Response Theory, we talked about some of the famous theories which come, or famous concepts which come under this term reader response theory, and we promise that we will discuss all those theories individually, all those concepts individually. In today's lecture, we will take up transactional reader response theory. Now, in transactional reader response theory, we have got three prominent theorists or critics who have talked about transactional reader response theory in different ways or in different manners. And those three critics are, we have Louisa Rosenblatt, we have Wolfgang Iser, and we have C. Booth. Now, these three critics or theorists have tried to develop the concepts or ideas regarding reader response theory under the heading transactional reader response theory. Now, when we talk about transactional reader response theory, it comes with an important word, that is transaction. And transaction often than not takes place between two different objects, between two different persons, or between two different things. And in this case, in the case of reader response theory, the transaction would be between the reader and the text. So transactional reader response theory, to put simply, would mean transaction that takes place between the text and the reader. Now remember, as we have also mentioned in the Introduction to Reader Response Theory, that during new criticism or before reader response theory, this transaction was not upheld by the critics and was also not celebrated, because prior to reader response theory, reader was not significant. Reader was not going to influence the meaning of the text in any manner. Therefore, reader was always going to be static, and also the meaning of the text was going to be fixed and within the text itself. Therefore, there was not going to be any kind of communication or transaction between reader and text, which in the long run would have influenced the meaning of the text. But reader response theory, particularly transactional reader response theory, made it possible or told us that the process of reading a text is not static at all. It is dynamic. It goes through a process of transaction and continuous transactions for that matter also. So, as I said earlier, that there would be three theorists upon whom we would be looking at understanding the transactional reader response theory, beginning with Louisa Rosenblatt. Now, Rosenblatt was a writer who wrote about reader response theory as early as 1939, during a time when new criticism was at its peak. And Louisa Rosenblatt published a book, Literature as Exploration, which came out in 1939. Louisa Rosenblatt does not talk about any specific theory that she was in, but since during 39s and 40s and in 40s, new criticism, or the ideas of new criticism, beginning from 1924-25 with the publication of the works of I. Richards, primarily practical criticism, the reader was not the center of the discussion amongst the theorists. But in the book Literature as Exploration, what Rosenblatt does, she takes on new critical attitude towards the text, and she makes certain strong claims, and one of them being that the reading process should not be robotic. The reading process must include the element of human. We just cannot allow a text as well as the reader to be static, because what new critics believe, that text has got an intrinsic meaning, a meaning within itself, and that meaning is to be understood and produced by not taking into consideration anything from outside the text. When we do not take anything from outside the text, then even the activities of reader become very static and they become very robotic. They have a fixed kind of a canvas, fixed kind of an area on which they have to look, and they were basically words on the pages. The ontological criticism, which was for that matter propagated by the new criticism. But Louisa Rosenblatt said that it is very important at this point of time. She is talking about it in 1939 in the Literature as Exploration, that an element of humanness must be attached to the reading process. Rosenblatt says, and I quote, "Instead of being based on fixed rules of conduct unconditionally applied to all under all circumstances, judgment should be passed only after the motives of the behavior and the particular circumstances had to be understood." Now that is a very clear-cut idea or a clear-cut reiteration to the arguments of new criticism, where they had made certain strict rules, fixed rules of understanding the text. But Rosenblatt says that this must not be the case. We cannot make strict rules for analyzing the text and then corner a text and do not take into consideration the behavioral pattern of the reader in the production of the meaning. She further says, "From enhanced perception may flow a sense of the human and practical implications of the information that has been acquired. This information is no longer words to be rattled off. The words now point towards actual human situations and feelings." Now that was basic instance of Rosenblatt towards the reading activity, and she said that we must include the human feelings and passions. And why should we do so? Because the text, which basically are the words on pages, are not merely words on pages, but they on their own also express the experience of human beings, emotions of human beings, feelings of human beings. And when we are basically reading the emotions and feelings and practical experiences, we just cannot say that these experiences, these passions, these emotions should be understood by excluding the real passions and real emotions and real human touch. So what Rosenblatt said, that it is very important at this point of time to take a next level of reading wherein reader should become important. Now that was in 1939. Later, almost 20-30 years later, Rosenblatt, in the book The Reader, the Text and the Poem, Rosenblatt comes up with this concept, what we call as transactional reader response theory. Now, as the title suggests, the reader, the text and the poem. Now here we also have three different concepts, are three different people who are going to be engaging in this concept. So she begins with the reader, with the text and the poem. Now you must be a bit confused about the text and the poem, but Rosenblatt also initiated or began this transactional reader response theory by first distinguishing between the text and the poem. And she believed that text are merely words on pages with no definite meaning, with no fixed meaning of their own, and those words on a page of a paper, which is basically text, cannot be classified under poem or play or novel or essay or anything else unless this text goes into the hands of the reader and the transaction takes place and the reading takes place. Now, once that transaction takes place between the text and the reader, a literary work comes into being, comes into existence, and that literary work then could be anything. It could be a poem, it could be an essay, it could be a novel, it could be a play, it could be anything. But once the writer has written, you just cannot say unless it has been read. Now here what we find is that reader becomes important not only in giving the name to the text, not only in fact giving the meaning to the text, but also giving name to the text. So what happens here is the text, which was objective and an object for that matter in new criticism, which existed the moment it was written in Rosenblatt's ideas under reader response theory, text which has been written does not exist. It only exists when it comes in contact with the reader, when the transaction takes place, and in that transaction it gets a name and it gets a meaning. Name would be anything, for example, poem, novel, drama, whatever you call, and also meaning, and that meaning would be highly influenced by the attitude of the reader, by the behavior of the reader, by the perception of the reader, by the knowledge of the reader, by the experience of the reader. And that meaning which this text would get would be dynamic in its nature, would not be fixed in its nature, would change with every second reading of the same reader, as well as will change through when different readers would read this text or this literary work now when it comes into that transaction. Also in this book, The Reader, the Text and the Poem, Rosenblatt gives this concept of transactional reader response theory, wherein she says that whenever a text is read by the reader and it becomes a literary work, both the reader and the text get influenced through this process of communication. For example, the meaning of the text also gets influenced, and in return, the reader also gets influenced, because it's a transaction, it's a both-way traffic, it's a two-way traffic. It's not a case where one is static and the other is dynamic. No, both are dynamic, both affect one another, and both influence one another. In that case, the reader for that matter would be influencing the meaning of the text, and the text in return would be influencing the information, the knowledge, the personality of the reader. So both become equally important in judging the essence of the work of art as well as the genuineness of the reader, as well as the intellectual aspect of the reader. Now in this regard, while dealing with transactional reader response theory, Rosenblatt talks about two important concepts or two important modes of reading. One of them being aesthetic mode of reading and the other being afferent mode of reading. Afferent mode of reading, what the reader is involved in are only the informations that are contained within the text. Or, under afferent mode, reader would only be focusing upon the things that are being written by the text, and those information he would straight away collect. For example, the plot of the story, the relations that go on, the events that take place, and those events under afferent mode are taken by the reader as they are described or explained by the writer. But when it comes to the aesthetic mode, it's not only about the information that the text provides, but under this mode, what Rosenblatt says that the reader also, engages on the emotional side of the things. Now what he does, he becomes personally engaged with the text, and that information which perhaps he had collected through the afferent mode processes through aesthetic mode, wherein they come in contact with the information that the reader is having prior to reading this text, the emotions which the reader is having prior to reading this text. So what under aesthetic mode the reader would do, he would supply his own experiences, his own knowledge, his own information in order to understand the text and produce the meaning of the text. So these are different modes, different ways through which a text could be approached by the reader, as well as influenced in the production of the meaning. Now what we realize here in this transactional theory or in this process is that reader's subjective approach gets a thumbs up from the theorist, from the critic, which was not there in New Criticism. Now if you read New Criticism by J.C. Ransom, probably the Criticism Inc., he answers a question what criticism is not, and in there he would talk about, for example, personal registrations, for example, paraphrasing, for example, synopsis and moral attitude and other things. Anything that comes from the reader was just discarded by the Ransom. But here Rosenblatt gives sufficient space for the reader to bring in all that he has, his perceptions, his knowledge, his experience, his information, through a static mode of reading in order to develop the meaning of the text. Now that was from Rosenblatt's side, wherein we had an afferent mode and we had an static mode. And the transaction that would take between the reader and the text would be from these two different perspectives or modes, the one being the afferent mode and the other being the static mode. At other times, you could also call this static and non-static mode. Non-static mode would refer to the afferent mode. Now, that was transactional reader response theory by Rosenblatt. Moving ahead, the next theorist would be C. Booth. Now, C. Booth also developed this transactional reader response theory, or he also focused upon this idea that when a text comes in contact with the reader, a transaction takes place between the two, and both of these just cannot stand in isolation and understand the text. But he does not talk about a static mode or of afferent mode. He discusses this transaction between the reader and the text in different ways. Now he comes up with implied reader and implied author or implied writer. Now these are the two concepts or two things that C. Booth discusses under transactional reader response theory. Now he says that whenever a writer writes a text, he has got two persons in mind. One is the implied author. The implied author, for that matter, is the second author or second self of the writer. The writer and the narrator. They are same things, but still the narrator is the second person, is the second self from the writer. So narrator is the implied writer, implied author, and implied reader would be that reader who is in the mind of the writer when he is writing, and he thinks the implied, the author basically thinks that this reader, when this text reaches to this reader, and if this reader starts reading this text in this way or in this implied manner, only then the correct meaning of the text would be understood. C. Booth says the author creates in short an image of himself and another image of his reader. He makes his reader as he makes his second self. And the most successful reading is one in which the created selves, author and the reader, can find complete agreement. Now, this transaction takes place with an agreement of ideas, agreement of ideology, agreement of state of mind, agreement of everything. Now, this agreement should take place between an implied reader and an implied writer. Now, both the implied reader and implied writer exist in the mind of the original author when he is writing the text. So, the transaction under this heading, according to C. Booth, would not be from afferent mode or aesthetic mode, but would be between two persons, reader and writer. But both of them are implied. They are not, for that matter, real. These implied readers and implied writers existed in the mind of the author. And when do we realize the real meaning of the text? Would be when there is that compatibility between the implied reader and the implied writer. That was C. Booth's idea or concept of transactional reader response theory, wherein he talks about implied reader and implied writer. C. Booth also develops a different idea of criticism, and he calls it ethical criticism. In one of the books, The Company We Keep, Booth talks about this kind of reader response criticism or this kind of reader response theory wherein you have implied reader and you have implied writer. So both implied reader and implied writer must have that, minimum understanding of the things related to both of them to reach to an agreement where they can understand the text. But here he says that there exists an ethical criticism also. And in this ethical criticism, what Booth says that it's not only about implied reader and implied writer, but there are interconnections and connections between our real life and literary works that we consume. And he says we can no longer pretend that ethical criticism is past. It is practiced everywhere, often surreptitiously, often guiltily, and often badly, partly because it is the most difficult of all critical modes, but partly because we have also so little serious talk about why it is important, what purpose it serves, and how it might be done well. Now he says that this ethical criticism, mostly people think that it's dead, it's outdated, but that is not the case. In ethical criticism, what we need to realize is that literary work and our real life, they have got a great connection. Now, if literary work and literary life have got connection, if they are interconnected, then it is just not good or right to say that they do not influence each other, and that the implied reader and implied writer should not exist, and that reader should not have a say. When literary works are but a reflection of our real lives and they are interconnected, then they should also be looked like that. But the ethical criticism has not been established well by many. Even if it is practiced, as he says that it is practiced everywhere, but not satisfactorily. It may be, some people are practicing this ethical criticism shyly, some are practicing it badly, others are practicing it ignoringly, and also for that matter, we have not been very serious about this ethical criticism. And one of the reasons, says C. Booth, that we have not been, practicing this ethical criticism is because many people have confused ethical with the didactics. And if you remember, the new critics, they were not happy with the didactic approach towards the text. But C. Booth says that ethical criticism is not didactic criticism, but ethical criticism attempts to describe the encounters of a storyteller's ethos with that of the reader or listener. It does not have a didactic approach, but what basically ethical criticism does, it encounters the storyteller's ethos, which means the storyteller's culture, language, ideology, time, historical data, everything with that of the reader. And when does a proper transaction take place? When this storyteller's ethos are well understood by the reader. Now, what you have here is a subjective and historical approach to determining the meaning of the text. And again, it's a transaction between the storyteller, between the writer, as well as between the reader. Therefore, ethical criticism deals more about language and ideology. Now, it takes into account the significance of the language as well as of the ideology, as well as the circumstances, as well as the political aspects, as well as the historical aspects, which were all ignored by new critics. So, ethical criticism would be another means, another ways of transaction that takes place between the text and the reader. But this is slightly different from implied reader and implied writer. So ethical criticism is all about ideology and language. Now it's not merely about implied reader and implied writer, but here reader, even if he cannot be an implied reader, has to realize the ethos of the storyteller, has to understand the culture, has to understand the perception of the storyteller, of the narrator, in order to understand the meaning of the text. Booth further says, a fully responsible ethical criticism will make explicit those appraisals that are implicit whenever a reader or listener reports on stories about human beings and actions. Now, what here Booth basically means is that ethical criticism evaluates those things which are implicit within the text. By implicit, he means which are not directly conveyed to the text, conveyed to the reader. But what reader through ethical criticism would try to do would even understand those things which have not been directly spoken about, directly talked about. And by taking them also into consideration, we'll be able to make a good analysis of the text. And this appraisal, this evaluation of the implicit things are obviously those, that is the ideological influence, the historical influence, the political influence, the maybe biographical, the biographical influence that the work may contain, which the writer would not be talking directly within the text, but would be referring implicitly. Ethical criticism will also give us a mode, give us a way, a method to analyze that also. Now that was C. Booth's ideas about the transactional reader response theory, primarily talking about the implied reader, implied writer, and ethical criticism. Now last one, we are left with Wolfgang Iser. Now Wolfgang Iser is another theorist who has tried to improve upon the concepts of Rosenblatt's transactional reader response theory, where Rosenblatt talked about afferent mode and aesthetic mode. Here in Wolfgang Iser would talk about indeterminate meaning or indeterminate text and determinate text. We would also be dealing with Wolfgang Iser when we look at the reader response theory from structuralist point of view or from the narratological point of view. But here are these two concepts of Wolfgang Iser about the different texts are different things, are different transactions that take place in the text, and one of them being determinate text. Wolfgang Iser says that determinate meaning refers to what might be called the facts of the text. Certain events in the plot are physical descriptions clearly provided by words on pages. Now what we find is that this determinate text is much like the afferent information, afferent mode, wherein we are looking at the informations which are explicitly given within the text, which are explained, whether they be events, whether they be characters, whether they be changes in the narration, but they are clearly talked about by the poet. So the determinate meaning would not be very difficult to find for a reader. But when it comes to the indeterminate text, it refers to gaps in the text, such as actions that are not clearly explained or that seem to have multiple explanations, which allow or even invite readers to create their own interpretation. Now indeterminate are the gaps, things which are not explained. Now if they are not explained, then comes the significance of the reader. Now reader has got full right to make an interpretation of all these things on their own. Now this indeterminacy that exists in the text does not only exist in case of the reader. Now, there is also indeterminacy which is related to the characters within the text, because even there are informations which are not clearly given to the characters. For example, let me give an example of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. In Death of a Salesman, what we have, in Death of a Salesman, Willy Loman, who is basically a businessman, an agent, he never tells truth about his nature of work to his wife. He tells his wife always that he is very much liked in his office, his work is appreciated, he is growing day in and day out, but his wife actually does not know the reality. So that is a gap that is there within the text with respect to the character. His wife, never knows that the situation with Willy Loman is in contrast to what Willy Loman has been telling him. So what is writer doing here? He is deliberately, creating gaps or misinformation within the text. And these gaps, these misinformations become a source for the reader to, poke his nose into the text and derive a different kind of interpretation and different kind of meanings, which would be indeterminate, which would not be intrinsic, which would not be always obvious within the text. But here also takes place a transaction between the reader and the text. So these were the transactional reader response theory, wherein we discussed the concepts of Rosenblatt, C. Booth, and Wolfgang Iser. I hope that this lecture was helpful for you and you were able to understand reader response theory's transactional reader response theory. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe on the subscribe Your Academy. Keep watching Your Academy for more interesting stuff. You can visit Your Academy and watch various lectures concerning English literature. Thank you for watching.